And we don't have to worry about the video feed cutting out. Or like, I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes I'll be in the middle of saying something and I'll see it freeze. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep going.
Yes, I do that all the time.
And hope he heard it.
Sometimes during the pitch, I'm like not going to say anything because I don't want to interrupt. But then again, this happens with Alessa and I often, where we'll both be like, yeah, your pitch was really good, even though I missed half of it because the internet was just that bad.
Welcome. You are entering into a strange dimension. A dimension where narratives from across space and time come together. Narratives that could have, might have, or should have been all exist here in one space. This is CineCasters Ultimate Timeline.
Welcome back to CineCasters. This is a show where we watch movies and pitch them back to each other. You're tuning in for the final and fourth episode of Suptember. And for the first time ever in celebration, I am joined by not one, but two of the other CineCasters. I've got with me Alessa.
Hello.
And Nate.
Hi.
And on top of that, just to celebrate, we are actually in the same room.
Yeah.
We're in person.
We're in person, which is kind of crazy, actually. This is the first time we've recorded any CineCasters episode in person since November. November was the last time I recorded in person.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. And Alessa I haven't recorded with since September in person.
Was it?
Yeah. And Nate I haven't recorded with you in person since we did Cats.
That was like August.
August of 2020.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy.
This is the first time, have you done it 3 people before?
This is the first time we've done 3 people.
Wow.
So this is like a CineCasters 3-way round table. There's no table. But yeah, so this episode might be a little longer because we have 3 people pitching, and also like the fools we are, we picked a movie that has a lot to talk about.
It has 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours of material and has a lot to talk about. And we're of course talking about Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. So I guess we'll just get right into it. What did you guys think about Batman versus Superman?
I love Jesse Eisenberg so much.
Really?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was being completely sarcastic when I sent you that message earlier.
Oh, okay. It's hard to tell when you're writing it down.
No, I know. I don't do myself any favors by just stating it like I write everything else. I just sort of am hoping its sarcasm is read into it based on the fact that it is objectively wrong.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
That's why I was going to be like, really? Jesse Eisenberg? Because he certainly wasn't the worst part of this movie.
No.
Which is...
There was certainly... I'll say this. I definitely found parts of it entertaining.
Yeah.
Maybe for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. What about you, Alessa?
I mean, there was one point where Bruce actually acknowledges that he doesn't deserve Alfred, and I was like, yeah, valid. And that was probably like the best part of the whole movie.
Yeah. Actually, for me, the best part of this whole movie was Wonder Woman.
Yeah, she was great.
Because she's not really in it. Because I'm pretty sure that would have got messy too. My problem with Wonder Woman, because I still have a problem with it, is that I think she's overused.
In the context of the story.
Of the film, she's overused. I think if this wasn't called Dawn of Justice, if it was just Batman versus Superman, and you just had Wonder Woman as like a cameo, like she's just at the party, you know, and Bruce Wayne is like, oh, who's that? Very attractive lady. And then they have sort of this back and forth. The way they do, then anyone who watches or has seen Wonder Woman can be like, oh, they're building towards something, which is just good. You know, you're laying the groundwork for a larger universe, for more future storytelling. But having her show up in the end, I actually think removes emphasis from both Batman and Superman. Yeah,
it's a bit of a deus ex machina as well.
Yeah, she's still awesome, actually, and her theme is great. Her theme comes up a couple times.
Oh, the Junkie XL theme? Yeah.
I love it, and I love her. She's slowly becoming my favorite DC superhero outside of like the lesser known ones that are still my favorites. But like, I don't know. I just feel like she was overused. I wanted a cameo.
Yeah, so that's fair. Yeah,
I kind of had the same thoughts, but it was more that this whole movie seemed more like an advertisement for the Justice League.
That isn't happening.
Or
like that had happened, but then got redone.
Yeah.
And then redone again.
And then redone again. Yeah.
I think that was the extended version that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, you thought we were going to do
No,
Justice
like,
League.
yeah, that's what I was thinking about. But when I was watching it, I was like, they're hyping up all of these other characters that we haven't met yet, but they're really hyping it up. Like, they spent 10 minutes, probably, even maybe more, just talking about these other characters who have nothing to do with the plot.
Yeah, there's a whole scene where it's Wonder Woman looking at the different metahumans or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is cool for setup, but has nothing to do with our central plot because none of these characters are really important. And also, Wonder Woman herself, Diana Prince, isn't a main character. Why are we following her? Mm-hmm. Right? Now, arguably, you could say Lois Lane is a main character. We follow her a lot, and it makes sense. So, I think that works, but, like, I'm not sure why we're doing the same thing with Diana.
Yeah.
Why?
I would say that was just a general criticism I had for the movie, that there was too many characters. But before we get into that, I did want to say one thing that I did like about the movie was, I just said Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
But that was actually meant to remind me that the part that I liked was him saying, well, why would we impose morality on something?
Like human morality.
And I was like, okay, there's clearly an interesting idea here. There's the beginning of a thread. I would just make the claim that it doesn't get followed through properly, and they don't really tie it together with anything else that happens.
Yeah, I also felt like they were trying to do this morality between, like, demons and angels. Mm-hmm. Because they keep talking about the painting that Lex has, where he's like, oh, I want to flip it upside down, demons and angels, and the whole idea is, like, in the painting we can see that there's a demon coming up from hell and an angel coming from the sky, which is supposed to be like the demon is Batman and the angel is Superman, but he wants to flip it because we're not sure who the good guy or the bad guy is. But because Lex is manipulating the whole situation, it's hard to tell, like, what the point is.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a really hard time with, like, figuring out what Lex's motivation was.
I had no
like,
idea.
as the villain?
Yeah, okay, I have a guess.
Okay.
My understanding is that he's angry at some kind of authority figure, and so he's trying to make a point. It's very convoluted, and it's not a good reason for a villain to be motivated, but I think what they're implying is that he's angry at the idea of some authority figure and trying to show people that, oh, gods can be morally corrupt.
I mean,
I think
that's what I got out of it, because
Yeah.
he does this whole thing to set up Superman being this bad person that needs to be taken down.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, what's the goal? Why does he want to have? First of all, why does he want to take Superman down? That's never explained. Because, like, the whole setup of, like, making Superman out to be a bad person, then causing the explosion, then all of this stuff is like, okay, but why? What is Lex's goal other than he's like, we're going to let these aliens become part of... Like, you could have done something interesting where it's like, now Superman as a known alien, and then talk about, like, immigration on a global level. Do you know what I mean? Like, talk about, like, what's happening. I'm talking politically what's happening in the States. Like, how there was so much pushback, especially in 2015, around immigration and refugee status, and how people were allowing immigrants and whatnot in the country, particularly in the United States. So he's already an alien. Why not talk about it like that?
Yeah.
But that's not the point of it. Just seems like we're just like, oh, Lex is a genius, because he does have some really cool plans, but there's no motivation behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Just because he wants to.
yeah, but that's not good motivation. Mm-hmm. I also, and this is I feel like, for me, this was a Batman movie with Superman in it.
Yeah, it's hard to say even that, but...
Because I feel like it's actually, Batman is the main character, but in a lot of ways he's also the villain.
Yeah.
Because I dealt with that in my pitch, but I had a really hard time with this movie because I felt like Zack Snyder didn't understand Batman in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was an interesting... I'm willing to forego my conceptions of who I think Batman should be, but where I was confused, again, it had to do with motivation. I couldn't figure out why Batman's so obsessed with trying to, like, destroy Superman.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, he blew up one of your buildings in Metropolis and, contributed to the death of your employees. I don't see how that then leads to him going, I'm going to kill Superman. That just seems like such a leap to get to that point.
And that's my problem is, like, so first of all, like, having, like, Batman branding prisoners. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was like, what?
The reason that I don't understand that is I'm fine with Batman killing. It's not because a lot of people are like Batman never kills. Batman doesn't kill. I'm fine with Batman killing because this is clearly an older Batman. They even did this whole thing with the Joker being like the joke's on you, Batman, which is on the so like clearly this is like a Batman who's been through some shit.
Mm-hmm.
But the branding doesn't make sense to me because why would Batman do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then to me, that's like branding is something that a serial killer would do to his victims, and Batman, although obsessive, would see that as like some kind of trophy, some kind of memento.
Yeah.
Which is the things that he, as a detective, tries to undo or like sees in profiles in the people that he tries to stop. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that always ticks me off is a lot of people want to do Batman as an action movie, when I often think that they forget that Batman is the world's greatest detective.
I think so too. I feel the same way.
Yeah. So I felt like while I was watching this movie, I was like, this is trying to be like this big action thing, setting up like these two morally good people. But usually when Batman and Superman fight, it's not on the grounds that they see each other as wrong. It's usually on the grounds of methodology.
Mm-hmm.
So Superman is like, you have to stand up for what's right and what's just, and Batman is the same way. But he often is like, we have to, Batman's all about contingency plans,
mm-hmm.
right? That's why often people will call the Justice League Batman's League of Super Bitches, because it's Batman, and then he is always like, if somebody turns, I have a contingency plan.
Right.
He's always be prepared, be the smartest person in the room, know what's going to happen.
Right.
And so when you pitch the two of them against each other, it's because there has to be a reason. Like, so I'm thinking of in The Dark Knight Rises, the comic, Batman shows up and is like he's coming back to being Batman, but Superman is like, I've been sent by the American government to tell you stop being a vigilante, because in that situation Superman works for the government.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a representation of what America is, and Batman is the vigilante, and they're friends, but they still wind up having to fight each other because Superman is ordered to stop Batman, and it's crazy. But in this one it's just like, why do I care about either of them fighting one another? We spend a lot of time with Batman's motivation, but really Superman's motivation makes more sense because he's just like, I don't want to fight you, but I want to save my mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. There was actually, going back to Neil deGrasse Tyson for a second, I actually looked up an interview with him because he appeared in the movie, so I thought he must have some opinion of him appearing in the movie. Yeah. And I actually found an interview where he talks about Batman versus Superman. He doesn't refer to the actual movie. It may have come out before the movie actually came out, but he talks about how if you were to pit Batman and Superman against each other in a conflict, hands down, Superman would win.
Yeah.
No contest.
No contest.
So how do you make that an even playing field? How do you make that interesting?
Yeah.
And the way you do that is you make it a battle of ideals. And so he actually relates it very well to in the realm of superheroes and superhero genre, where one of the questions that gets brought up is, what role do superheroes have in society? So the conflict becomes society versus the superheroes, which is sort of alluded to in the movie. But Neil deGrasse Tyson's point was, it'd be interesting if in that context, because Batman can't fight Superman fists, like he would lose. So if it becomes a contest of legality, where he has those resources and he's able to disempower Superman that way, that would be far more interesting.
But then it would be like, why do we need Batman versus Superman? It would make more sense to do like Bruce Wayne versus Superman.
Well, okay, so then it becomes
the age-old argument of Batman.
Yeah, so I have a way around that possibly in my pitch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't want.
Did Alyssa have any?
That's what I was gonna say. Do you have anything like just goods and bads in general?
I don't have anything to add to what you guys were just saying, but I had a lot of bads here, which I feel so bad because I remember going to the theater and watching this movie and just being like, this is amazing. And I guess, I don't know, I'm older and I'm a cynic now.
It happens to the best of us.
So I was really confused with like the dreams that they kept putting in, like the bats at the beginning lifting Bruce out of the cave, and then like Mad Max Batman.
Oh, yeah, the Mad Max I think that's supposed to be like a premonition.
Or like I almost got the idea that Lex somehow made Batman dream of this. Like, I have no idea what was going on, and I couldn't figure it out, and it was really frustrating.
So I think, based on what I have seen of the Justice League, like the remake, is that the idea is that somehow Superman does actually go evil, and that Batman's dream in this movie is a premonition of what's going to happen as Superman like takes over the world and becomes like Uberman. Like the
Ubermensch.
The Ubermensch. But Overman is sometimes what he's also called.
Oh, okay.
As like evil Superman.
Yeah.
And like, so in the new Justice League like remake, there's like a thing with a bunch of the superheroes all together, like fighting against what I think is supposed to be Superman.
Oh, okay.
And it's like the Joker and Harley Quinn and Batman and Mira from Aquaman and a bunch of just like, and then the Flash as well. That's why later on he like comes back and is like, am I too early? Like, you were right about him all along. She's the key. He's talking about Lois Lane.
Oh, that's what's... Oh.
The problem with this is that the dream is a premonition, which doesn't make sense. If you get rid of that dream and then just have the Flash come in at that time, and then you're like, whoa, what was that all about? And just have it be a cameo. But I think the dream, the Mad Max dream, it doesn't make sense, because we keep having these like weird dreams that happen. There's even a part where he's like in the crypt, the Wayne crypt, and he sees the blood pouring out, and then all of a sudden like Man-Bat, it looks like Man-Bat comes out of the, and I'm like, but why? What is the purpose of this?
Yeah.
What are the purpose of the dreams in general?
Again, it's just an advertisement for the rest of the Justice League.
Yeah, I guess. It's my problem with Snyder is he's such an infuriating director. Watching his movies, like from a visual standpoint, is awesome, because I'm like, yo, this just looks great. It looks so good. The dream sequences, the action sequences, everything that he sets up is like visual poetry. But like poetry, it doesn't make sense in like outside of the context of the feeling it's trying to evoke. So I'm thinking of particular in the opening scene where we have Bruce's dream and the dude in Crime Alley, by the way, which is what it's actually called. The dude who shoots Martha and I can't think of his dad's name. I can't think of his dad's name. The dude who shoots the two of them, he like has the gun inside of Martha's pearl necklace and then shoots, and the pearls go scattering everywhere, and you're like, visually this is really interesting to watch. It's like almost artsy, right? The problem with how he like shows these kinds of scenes is you often talk about like this movie suffers from an excess of nobody talks like that, right? I think this movie and a lot of Snyder's work suffers from an excess of like nobody acts that way. Nothing in reality actually happens this way, but it looks great. It just makes the movie make less sense, which is frustrating.
Yeah. I would say it looks less artsy and looks more commercial.
Oh, okay.
Because I associate his visual aesthetic with commercials. Really? A lot of slow motion, like it's very polished. Yeah. It's very polished. It looks good. It's well composed. But to me, and this is why I would maybe disagree with saying there is a poetry to it, because to me, even like in poetry, there is still a logic to what's like the way in which things are constructed, in my opinion.
Yeah. Usually it's just more about a feeling, though.
Yeah.
In some versions of
poetry. Or a mix of both.
Yeah, I suppose it depends what sort of school of thought you would approach poetry with. Yeah. But in this case, to me, it's the way in which everything looks and the way in which it all fits together. None of these things actually contribute towards supporting the story, supporting the character, or supporting the theme.
Yeah.
And that's why, to me, it's like, well, they're just nice-looking images that have a commercial... They look like commercials.
Yeah, that's why I said they are really polished. They look really polished, and it's like dramatic. But yeah, you're right. It has this sort of like commercial, like it reminds me almost like of a perfume commercial.
Yeah.
You're just shown images of like things happening that they're not really related, but they all look super highly polished and ritzy.
Yeah, exactly.
What I'm hearing is my theory is right.
About
it's an advertisement.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe you are right.
Maybe
it's just like 2.5 hour advertisement for a movie you're not watching.
Yeah,
and Gillette.
Yeah, there's a.
Is this the one where they Gilletted his face?
No, that's Justice League.
That Justice League? Yeah.
I don't know where they had like
they had to remove his mustache
digitally afterwards. Have you heard about this?
No.
Oh, it's like this big deal. So Henry Cavill had to have his mustache removed digitally in one of the movies,
Right.
because he just had a mustache. And
he for some reason he had another role and he had to have the mustache.
He had to have the mustache, but they called him back for reshoots or whatever.
So he had the mustache, but they couldn't shave it, so they digitally removed his mustache.
Wow.
But just don't do reshoots, right? The whole idea of Nate's favorite line, fix it in post.
Oh yeah, I love it
right?
so much.
Don't do reshoots. Go out and make the movie that you're set to make out.
Yeah, actually, I'm a fan of reshoots generally.
Really?
If the movie doesn't work, then you should change it and you should go reshoot those scenes. Yeah.
And they did fix his mustache in post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like
that's fixing it in post. That's what annoys me. Yeah.
I just feel like I don't know, if your movie doesn't work, you think you would hopefully catch that during your like storyboarding or writing phase.
Yeah. There's so many movies where they've done reshoots, but necessarily I would say, yeah.
I guess I'm just not a fan of when the studio steps in and asks for reshoots.
Oh right, yeah, we don't
you
like
always
your
wind
ending.
up with.
Yeah.
I mean, the first episode we ever recorded was
Fantastic
Four, the
right.
Fan Four stick, right?
Right.
And that movie has the reshoots for the whole third act,
Right, yeah.
and it's noticeable. It's tonally different.
I should go back and watch that movie again.
Why?
Because I want to see what you're talking about.
Oh, you can
I'll
go back.
just like skip through the first 2
Yeah.
thirds.
I don't know. Anybody else have any more goods and bads?
I had kind of building on the long drawn out scenes of things happening that weren't fully connected. I kind of had another like almost connecting it to the first Superman movie that we did this month.
At the beginning of Suptember.
Yeah, where they just had a lot of stuff that didn't need to be there, and if they had taken most of it out, it probably would have only been like an hour and 45 minutes long, maybe. And most of it is just those extra scenes. But then again, there was also stuff with Diana that didn't need to be there. And
yeah, I just think maybe a more discerning hand with your editor could have just made like a.
Oh yeah.
'Cause, I mean, it's not uncommon to shoot like a lot of stuff and then cut it down so you have a succinct story. It just sometimes is maybe because Snyder is known for it, so he can get away with it in the studio system. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but like,
I wouldn't know. I would guess maybe he can because his movies do seem to do well commercially, but I don't know. I actually have really no idea how much control he even would have on a creative level, like how much the studio steps in and says, no, you've got to change this.
Or I just meant in terms of length.
Oh, in terms of length?
Like they don't give them, because a lot of movies are like you have like a 90-minute rough cutoff.
Oh,
time, right?
yeah,
but it's like a
yeah.
hard 90 minutes.
Right. But this is overly indulgent.
Yeah,
clearly.
and so sometimes I'm like, do we need this in order to tell a succinct story?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I suspect he wanted it to be that length.
Yeah,
and he was like, no, this is what I want.
And I'm flabbergasted by how much, like you said, how much time they spend on setting up the Justice League when this is Batman versus Superman movie, not a Justice League movie. My biggest problem structurally with this movie is the third act against Doomsday.
Is that who that is supposed to be?
That's because he says, "Behold your Doomsday," so I assume that's supposed to be Doomsday. That's
really a great line.
Not really how
Behold your Doomsday.
Not really how I imagine Doomsday looking, but whatever. It's not my movie. My problem is the movie is building towards this battle with Batman versus Superman. That's the big battle, and it's not the climax of the movie. The climax of the movie is when Wonder Woman shows up and they all fight against Doomsday.
Right.
And I get that the whole idea of like Superman sacrifices himself, and that's what Batman realizes that he's good, but by then he should have already realized it, and he kind of did with the whole like, why did you say that name? I can't believe that this entire movie hinges on the fact that their moms have the same name. It's a funny coincidence, but I wouldn't hinge an entire movie on it.
Yeah.
Also, bringing it back to who talks like that, who calls their parent like by their name? Like, I know there's some people out there, but I don't go around being like, oh, Gary is gonna help me with whatever.
Yeah. I do. There are some people out there who call their parents by their first name, but it's uncommon.
Yeah.
So when he says like save Martha, it would probably be like save my mom.
Right.
And earlier in the movie, when he called her, he was like, hey mom.
Hey mom.
Yeah.
So that it feels unnatural. Like.
Yeah.
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 Unless the only way I think that works is if Batman doesn't know who Superman is.
Oh, okay.
Which in the movie is true. Except here's the problem. He's supposed to be the greatest detective, but Lex Luthor knows who both of them are, and neither of them do.
Yeah.
Clark Kent is a reporter.
Yeah.
Batman is the world's greatest detective, right?
They should have.
They should have figured it out, and that easily could have been this awesome thing where you have them like fighting each other in their superhero lives,
Right.
mirrored by how they're trying to figure out who each other is in their actual lives.
Yeah.
Right? That's a great mirror right there. Like I mean, I don't even have to. I can't even say anything more on that because it's so obvious to me to be like, and it would be even funnier if they actually became friends, like their secret identities, or rather their like actual persona. So Bruce and Clark actually became friends while they were trying to figure out who Batman and Superman are respectively.
Right.
So you play that off each other. So as they learn who each other is, they're like, oh shit, like this person that I'm getting to know and becoming friends with is actually somebody I can't trust, or an alien creature or whatever. And then you sort of have to like break that down. That's a story right there.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
easy,
Yeah.
right? Those beats write themselves, which is why this is so frustrating. How does the greatest detective in the world not know who Superman is? As soon as he was like this guy on the streets, I would have, as if I was Batman, I would have been like, I need to figure out who that is.
Yeah, exactly.
And he has the resources to do it.
Yep. Clearly, he has the resources to do it.
Well, the Bat computer has been shown, at least in Christopher Nolan's movies, to basically like have access to every like cell phone in the world, which is a huge violation of privacy. But it's Batman, so it's fine if he does it, but not if governments do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think we talked about Alfred. Jeremy Irons as Alfred. How did everyone feel about that?
I can't say. I mean, it was fine, I guess.
I thought it was a really cool casting choice.
Yeah.
Be like, that's interesting. I don't know if I would have gone with Jeremy Irons. He does a good job, except he's not really in the movie.
Yeah, I guess that's, it was sort of, he's kind of there and gone.
We don't spend a lot of time with anyone. Go on.
I was going to say, he's one of my favorite actors. If he could narrate my life, I would be okay with that. But that was, one of my grievances was, where is he? He just kind of shows up when it's convenient that Bruce just needs an extra hand.
Yeah.
I liked the choice that he's a little bit more involved in sort of making the technology than the Michael Caine.
Who was just the butler. Yeah.
But so that was an interesting choice for it. But other than that, he was kind of there and gone. And
I also thought it was interesting, like, how old is Ben Affleck? He's got to be in his 50s.
I think so.
So he's a little bit. So the idea is an older Batman.
Yeah.
And Jeremy Irons doesn't look that much older. So in the Christopher Nolan movies, Michael Caine is like 70 odd.
Yeah.
Even though Christian Bale as an actor is
in his 40s.
In his 40s. Yeah. So it looks much older. Whereas like Jeremy Irons, I don't really feel like looks at least that much older than Ben Affleck, even though this is supposed to be an older version of Batman who's already tangled with the Joker a bunch.
Right.
I don't know. It just seemed very strange to me on that level.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments on this one?
I felt unfortunately, like, as Lois Lane's a pretty essential character, but I felt that her plot was very tangential in a way that didn't really affect the outcome between Batman and Superman. And maybe it's just because I'll admit I kind of skimmed through some of it.
Oh yeah,
but
I watched this at 1.5 speed. It's so long.
But I was trying to figure out how what she is doing. Like, she's trying to figure out there's this technology.
This bullet. She found a bullet that nobody can identify, and she thinks that somebody tried to set Superman up.
So then, how does that have anything to do with anything that follows?
Because it turns out to be Lex. Except we don't really need it because Lex reveals himself to Superman.
Exactly.
We don't need it. I actually think you're right. I think if Lois Lane's plot could have been taken up as Clark Kent being a reporter, then Lois has become superfluous.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
yeah. My last comment would be that I think that this is the fact that they're like friends all of a sudden was weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, all of a sudden he's like, I'm a friend of your son's, and she's like, I figured it's the cape, which is a good line. It's a good line. It's funny, and it's also like, oh yeah, they both wear capes.
I laughed pretty hard at that.
The thing that I don't understand is Batman is generally distrustful and cynical. So even though he may think that Superman is actually a good person now, that doesn't mean he would necessarily be like, we're friends.
Yeah, exactly. That's a total bait and switch.
Yeah,
Makes no sense.
like for Bruce, at least the Batman that I know, for Bruce, he would go, I understand the ideals that Superman stood for, and the sacrifice makes sense in that context, because now he goes, I need to stand for the ideals that Superman stood for. But that still doesn't, even that sacrifice wouldn't even make them friends.
Right.
You know what I mean? He might just be like, I stand for what the man stood for. I still didn't know him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And the fact that he just sort of like immediately implicitly trusts Diana too.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
He spends less time with her than he does with Clark.
That's a good point.
He spent a lot of time being very skeptical of everyone, and then all of a sudden was just like, yeah, I guess you two are pretty cool.
Yeah. It was very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Should we get into some pitches?
Yeah.
Feeling good.
I'm open with that.
Who's feeling the most confident on their pitch?
I'm feeling pretty confident.
I'm feeling confident with mine too.
I'm also feeling pretty confident.
Oh, this is weird. Okay. Maybe I'll just go first to make it easier.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
That way we're not like sitting here arguing about it. So mine basically starts the same way. We have Batman, Bruce is forced to go to Metropolis for something that's happening at Wayne Enterprises, and we don't get why. It's just a little bit before the scene that we see at the beginning of the movie when Superman and Zod are fighting from the Man of Steel. So the Man of Steel is still canon, although you could take my pitch from Superman, the first Superman movie we did at the beginning of Suptember. You could take my pitch and overlap it with this one. That's fine. So, but basically Man of Steel is canon. So that whole thing happens where Metropolis burns and everything's exploding, and yeah, that happens exactly the same, even with like the guy getting trapped with his legs underneath. But the person on the phone isn't some guy named Jack. It's a woman named Kate. So now it's 18 months later, where we see Bruce is like an older Batman, and they're like basically like radio edits and whatnot saying that like they're very interested in that Bruce Wayne in the last 18 months since the tragedy in Metropolis has actually been more public than he has in the last 15 years, and he's gone out into the world again. He's coming to functions, he's donating, he's apparently more involved with what's happening at Wayne Industries than he has in 15 years. So, and he's really using his name to help build wealth and influence back in Metropolis. Meanwhile, we also see that Gotham City for the last 15 years has actually been going pretty well. So crime rates are down and the city seems to be like on the up and up. Yeah. So while getting ready for a function, we can see that Bruce is in the shower, but he's watching the news while he's showering, and they're talking about Superman. They're still talking about like, is Superman, can he be trusted? How do we know he's not going to turn on us? He has this sort of infinite godlike power. And we also see that a butler is setting out his clothes for him in another room. As Bruce gets out of the shower, he turns off the radio, and the butler is revealed, and it's not Alfred.
Ooh.
It's a young woman. Bruce thanks her, and calling her Juliet, and then leads Bruce to a private jet. She leads Bruce to a private jet where he takes off for Metropolis. So at the function, it's all black tie and whatnot. We see Bruce is introduced to a young up-and-coming businessman named Alexander Luthor and his company LexCorp. This young kid has basically also been donating large sums of money to rebuilding Metropolis, and between the two of them, they are over 50% of the donations for that evening. And we can have some like exorbitant number. So they're probably one of the two richest, or two of them are some of the world's richest men. And though Bruce is normal about the press, they're really interested in Alexander, who he has everyone call him Lex. And the reason the press is more interested in him is because he's only 27. He's a self-made billionaire and genius, and he basically pulled himself up by his bootstraps with his own like intellect. And Bruce Wayne comes from old money and privilege, so they're like, and now this Lex kid is giving back to Metropolis, even though he's 27 years old. Sure, he's a billionaire, but he wants to give his money back, whereas Bruce Wayne comes from old money, even if he is successful. So Lex explains that he's been doing research into robotic prosthetics and wheelchairs, and introduces Bruce to Wallace, who Lex is like, this is my +1. I wanted to give something back. So he's at this ritzy event, and he's just invited like a regular guy who happens to be in a wheelchair. Turns out Wallace was actually the person that Bruce lifted the part of the building off of way back there. And so the two of them are like reacquainted, and he's like, you saved my life, Mr. Wayne. And he's like, don't even mention it. And we can see this shiny new wheelchair that LexCorp has built for Wallace. So at the event, where we can also have Bruce introduced to Diana Prince, who's just another guest. She's representing a museum there, and we can have them flirt, but it's only a cameo. I just like the idea of like her showing up and having like the classic Bruce Wayne, who hasn't been seen in a long time, and she can make a comment about that, who hasn't been seen in a long time in public, and immediately have him be Bruce Wayne and flirt with her, having no idea that we, the audience, know it's Wonder Woman. I just thought that would be funny. And fun. Little cameo. When the conversation turns to Superman, one of the senators who's also there asks Bruce if she'll back his campaign to hold Superman accountable. And he's like, yeah. She's like, I'm going to set up this whole thing at the Senate. We're going to have Superman come. We need to talk about how his power works and not necessarily rein him in, but just talk about how, if you have unlimited power and no checks and balances, that makes people nervous. So she wants to actually have a conversation. It's not like, let's bring Superman down. She's like, yeah, I see that people are scared. And if Superman's a reasonable person, he'll show up. And Bruce is like, yes, actually, this sounds like a really good thing to do. So I'll help back that up. So he says, I'll back it up with whatever she needs. Yeah, so the hearing occurs, and the press are covering it, and Superman shows up, and the building explodes in a fiery blaze, and basically Superman is the only one left standing after he murders everyone in the building. So Bruce puts his research into finding... sorry, there was another thing that I missed. I knew I was going to miss this. The reason Bruce was in Metropolis in the first place is because this Kate woman that I mentioned is his cousin on his mother's side. Kate Kane, she had found something and asked Bruce to come and look at it because it was for his eyes only. But she died during the explosion. So he's been looking into what the item, whatever she found is, and he can't find any records of it because it was for his eyes only. So right. she only put that there was an item into the records, but not even what the item was. So he's been looking into this. But after the hearing happens and everything explodes, Superman is to blame. Bruce puts his research into finding what Kate found aside and starts looking into everything on Superman. So he's just like searching everything, trying to find it. But his computer's resources are limited because he's using a regular computer, and he refuses to go into the Batcave. Will not go in. But he's determined to figure it out, and he's basically becoming an obsession. So we all of a sudden then get a flashback where Bruce and Alfred, Alfred comes down, and it's a younger Bruce, and he's like, you have to be careful that you don't lose yourself in your obsession. You have to make sure you promise me that if you're going to keep doing this, you need to find someone to help you. And we see that Alfred is wearing an oxygen mask and is slowly dying from cancer in the flashback. So Bruce deduces that Superman must have a secret identity because that's what he did for all those years. So he's trying to figure out how to do it, but he refuses to go into the Batcave. So Juliet, his butler, was basically told that she's going to look into what's happening with Kate while Bruce is looking into the Superman thing. He didn't straight up tell her that, but so she's been looking into this, and she finds that after the explosion, the item wasn't specified, but it was missing, and there's no record of it in the building. So she thinks it was actually taken. And Bruce is like, nowhere to be found in the manor, but he hasn't left the manor because he would have told her. So she goes around trying to search for him, and he shows up in a place where she already looked, and she's like, that's really, really weird. And he's like, don't worry about the thing that Kate was looking into. Just keep looking into it. I'm busy right now. So the next day after breakfast, Juliet says, or he tells Juliet, like, I'm going to go work in my office. But this time she follows him, and she sees him disappear into a bookcase. And then she goes into the office and tries to find the bookcase, like how the bookcase works. Yeah. And then he appears behind her and goes, what are you looking for? And she's like super embarrassed. And he's like, no, it's time I kept my promise anyway. And he brings her down to the Batcave. And he basically asks her help. He's like, I need help finding Superman. Can you keep this a secret? And she's like, yes. So based on what Bruce finds, he figures out who Superman is. Clark Kent goes to the Daily Planet, interviews with Lois, who met Superman, and he deduces that not only is Superman and not only is she in love with Superman, but he's also her coworker because he's just that good of a detective. Bruce speaks with Clark, but he doesn't trust anyone. He seems like a really nice person, but he doesn't trust anyone, so he does more digging. Lex has now basically taken up the cause against Superman after the terrible thing at the Senate, and is pushing for legislation against Superman in the UN, and is volunteering his own company. Like, we can hold him accountable with the technology we have. Bruce goes to investigate Smallville and learn about his family. While he's gone, Juliet uses the Bat computer to look into more of what Kate Kane had discovered, and that leads her to LexCorp. So when Bruce returns, he confronts her about her hypothesis. She's like, something's going on with LexCorp. And Bruce is like, we need to focus on Superman. Like, it's fine that you want to look into this, but I'm not interested, even if he did steal it, the object, whatever it was. I'm not interested in what some shitty, snotty-nosed little kid is doing in Metropolis when there's a god on the loose killing people, essentially. We then get another flashback where it's Batman in the actual bat suit, and it's covered in blood, and he and Alfred are arguing, and Bruce basically says there was no other option, and Alfred's like, there's always another option. He's like, you don't understand, Alfred, you weren't there. There was no other option. But then he basically explains that he's talking to Kate, and he's talking to Juliet, his butler, and basically saying, like, after that, Alfred passed away, and I was basically left on my own. That's why I hired you as my new butler. And I've been too afraid to put the suit on because I'm afraid that I might kill again. Because I put the Joker down. I killed him. Oh. I beat the shit out of him, and I killed him. And I'm afraid to put the suit on again. So Bruce then tells Juliet, basically, stop putting your energy into this. You need to help me. So immediately after this, another event occurs in Metropolis, whatever, I don't care what it is, but Superman is at the center of it, and a bunch of people are dead after he used his powers. Juliet says that something is off. Like, Bruce shouldn't do this. He shouldn't go after, like whatever it is. You should go after, like, some things that actually matter instead of being obsessed, which is what this is starting to become, an obsession. Bruce manages to find a small amount of kryptonite, which he thinks he can use, but he has to be very careful because not only is it small enough, but it's radioactive to humans. So not only will it affect Superman, but it's radioactive to humans. Batman and Superman fight, and Superman explains that he's a good guy and was framed, and he's been looking into it, but that he's amazed. He's also amazed that the Dark Knight is actually a thing. Like, Batman puts the suit on,
right,
and he hasn't been seen in 15 years since he killed the Joker, and Superman is like, holy shit, you're real. And Batman is like, yeah, and I'm here to put you down. And they fight. And while Batman was detectiving Superman, Clark had also been looking into Batman because he was fascinated by this superhero who appeared before he was even Superman. And he's like, holy, like, you changed the system. Like, I don't agree with your methods, but Clark has also been looking into Lex because he thinks he's being framed, and he's trying to explain this. But even and Bruce is not listening. He's like, no. You're just trying to get yourself out of this. Even with the kryptonite, Superman destroys Batman, just destroys him, and Juliet basically shows up and peels Bruce off the pavement after he's been like destroyed, but he wasn't killed by Superman. She then forces him, like, basically, look at what I found. And what she found is that Kate found a massive amount of kryptonite, and during the explosion it was stolen by Lex. He used it as a cover-up for the explosion to fashion it into a weapon to use against Superman, and then set it up so that Superman would look like Superman was terrible.
Right.
And then he would basically force government into giving him contracts because he now has a weapon to kill Superman. So he would basically be like, look how bad he is. I have a weapon to take him down. Give me your money.
Right. Oh, interesting.
Right? Which worked. So this forces Bruce to admit that he was wrong, that there is another way. Right. That he thought the only way was to kill Superman. He thought the only way was to kill the Joker. Right. It forces him to go, he may have been the smartest person in the room. He may have been the most well-planned. He may have even had kryptonite, but he was wrong. Both about the Joker, like killing the Joker, there was another way. And basically the idea is that Alfred was like, you wanted to believe there was no other way because you wanted to do it.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
And now, and he's doing the same thing. I wanted to believe there was no other way because I wanted to put the suit back on. I wanted to fight Superman. Right. And maybe I even wanted to get killed by him, but I was wrong. So finally, like, he puts the suit back on because he has to, even though it's destroyed. He puts the suit back on because he knows Lex has the kryptonite. Superman and Lex are fighting, and Batman shows up, and Lex is like, "You're real?" And so basically Batman saves Superman from Lex.
Oh, interesting.
And then Lex is sent to prison, but all the time that he spent handling the kryptonite catches up with him, and his hair falls out due to radiation poisoning.
Oh.
And that's the end.
Interesting.
So, I did also want to just quickly say, like, in the Justice League movie, Superman is suffering from an image problem, because even though he's been vindicated and Bruce knows who he is and they actually know who each other is, and they're slowly trying to build like some kind of trust between the two of them, as well as putting together a team, Superman is still suffering from an image problem. And they would finally put together the team. They could have whatever villain they wanted, and when they fight, it's all five, like Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, The Flash, and Cyborg, all fighting, but they're taking turns fighting, I guess, Doomsday.
Right.
And while one of them is fighting, the other ones are actually like saving people and stopping collateral damage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're rotating out who's fighting, while the other one is like catching debris from falling on people. So what it's showing is, like, as a team, all five of them are concerned with keeping people safe.
Right.
And so, like, you know, the Flash would zoom around and they save some people as like a building falls so nobody gets hurt, and then he would like run in and tag Superman out and then punch Doomsday while Superman flies up and stops a car from falling on people. Do you know what I mean? Like, rotating through who's fighting, so that, and like the idea would be like, yes, these people do care, collateral damage is a problem, but as a team they can deal with it.
Right. Okay.
So there's my short pitch for that too.
Nice.
Yes.
I like that.
Sorry, that was a little long, but there was a lot in this movie.
Yeah, I had a hard time keeping mine short too. Yeah, because there's so much like material you've got to sort of unpack and then re-put together.
But the basic theme behind mine was to try and say, like, actually in mine I wanted Batman to be his own villain.
Yeah.
I don't know if that came across quite as well, but like the idea is he was wrong and he has to admit it before he can go back to being the Batman he was.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I like that.
Yeah.
We did something a little similar.
Oh, so you want to go?
But
then?
a little bit flipped. So yeah,
Okay.
I kind of want to go next because I think that would make the most sense. Okay, so this is gonna sound really familiar to basically all of my pitches this month, because for some reason I like doing.
Is it another musical?
No. An origin story.
Oh, okay.
So something about that, I like origin stories, because Superman the musical was an origin story.
Yeah.
Daredevil was an origin story. So here we are with Batman's origin story,
Yeah.
where he also happens to fight Superman. So we'll start off. We see a well-off family together. They're hanging out, watching TV. It's like, I don't know, the 70s or 80s maybe. We can tell that they're rich. Like, they're not even middle class. Like, they're above rich. And we see Superman on the TV saving the day. I don't know, maybe like a plane was crashing or something. Like the classic, right? Bruce is watching this and he's like enamored. He's like, this is amazing. Superman is awesome. He's gonna save the world. Like, we have nothing to fear. So it's exactly kind of what every young boy would see seeing a superhero in real life. So we flash forward to they go out, the classic night out scene, theater, both parents get killed, you know, again, the classic. And basically the next couple scenes are him, like, you know, Superman was supposed to save, you know, everyone who needs help, and that didn't happen. And he kind of decides to be that person who can kind of fill the gaps that Superman can't. So he starts, I don't know, start with like a training montage, because again, classic.
Nice.
That's what else do you put in, right? We've got Bruce grows from a boy to a teen. He vows to take over the family business. At the same time, he is always kind of keeping an eye out on Superman as the threats slowly start to get bigger. So while he had started by saving people from things that were like, airplanes crashing or natural disasters, suddenly, you know, people are rising up because they want to test their mettle against Superman. And as we see Bruce getting older, he's learning how to fight, he's learning how to be a businessman, he's like, you can see that he starts resenting Superman's presence. And then it gets to the point where Bruce officially, I don't know what age it would be, but he officially takes over Bruce Enterprise or Wayne Enterprises.
Bruce business.
And literally like a week later, we get the scene with General Zod and the big fight. And
is it still Man of Steel, or is it just that scene you want?
I don't know, they're Superman and Zod fighting.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter, I guess, what type of...
I'm just wondering, is Man of Steel like canon in yours, or do you just want the scene?
No, if anything, it is kind of a continuation of Superman the musical, but not being a musical. So, because I'm still thinking of like what happened in Superman the musical. So it is, it does kind of continue that. I lost where I was.
Sorry.
So there's that big fight. The main building gets shut down, and again, I just keep losing my place. Had some really messy writing.
So like Batman was resenting Superman, but took over the business.
Yeah, basically. So this whole time, oh my god, I'm like a whole page behind. Sorry, this is why I shouldn't have everything handwritten. Okay, so yeah, again, training montage, blah 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 blah. The alien invasion with General Zod. The main building gets destroyed. And then the same kind of thing that you were saying, where all of a sudden Wayne Enterprises is like super invested in building the city again, fixing everything that has gone wrong, and trying to get things back on track. So at the same time, while he's doing that, while Alfred is mostly doing all of that, but Bruce obviously just goes to the press when he needs to. He is focusing on trying to figure out what Superman's deal is. Who is he? Where did he come from? He's been around for a long time because he was around when Bruce was a boy. Yeah. I actually had to Google this. I was like, does Superman age?
Depends on the version.
Oh, yeah. I actually don't know.
I Googled it and there was like, there's different ones. And sometimes it's like, he's like an elf where he ages, but it's slow because of the sun.
It's like, can Wonder Woman fly?
Yeah.
I still don't know. In some versions, yes. In some versions, no.
I don't think so. If anything, she could probably leap really high.
Over tall buildings?
Yeah. So he's also seeing that some of the people who back in the day when there were like this wave of people who were just trying to test their mettle against Superman, those people are getting released back out or finding their way out of prison.
Dun, dun, dun.
So Batman's like, well, obviously something's not working here because these people are back out on the streets and they're causing mayhem again. And now Superman has all these otherworldly problems to deal with on our world, while at the same time, all of these other man-made problems, or I guess Superman-made problems, are, on the streets. So Batman he's like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to be the cleanup crew for a little bit. And he fights all these people that Superman has fought. And he's like, okay, well, these people lost against Superman, but I'm winning against them. So obviously that says something about me. And so he's building his confidence as a fighter. But the difference is that he is killing the people.
Oh, shit.
That Superman has already fought. It's like, yeah, okay, Superman let you off. I'm not going to.
Damn.
Oh.
So Superman ends up in Gotham. I couldn't really figure out exactly how because I didn't really care that much about what Kent was doing. But he just happens to show up and Bruce is like, hey, I'm going to fight you because you're doing a bad job. These people are coming back and creating chaos and you're too busy dealing with things that you should probably just take to another planet. Like, get out of here. And Superman is like, well, I'm not going to fight you and I'm not going to turn you in because I respect what you're doing. I just don't respect your methods. So he fights them. The Batwit, or loses, sorry. So obviously we need another training montage or something.
He climbs his way out of prison.
Yeah.
So, I forgot to mention. So, when Bruce's parents died, we also see that he has a friend named Lex Luthor. And they're growing up together with similar situations, except that Lex's parents both died of natural causes. Bruce's were brutally murdered. But they kind of bond over their orphanness while also being like heirs to these big companies.
Yeah.
So Lex's family was weapons manufacturer, and I don't actually remember what Wayne Enterprises was.
Depends
they do a
on the
lot
version,
of different things.
but they do a bunch of different things.
But yeah, so Lex
Old
has always
money.
kind of been humoring Bruce's fascination with Superman, just not really like, you know, he just kind of thinks it's like, you know, yeah, just a fascination. Like he's just interested in what Superman is doing. And then at one point after this fight with Superman, Bruce goes to Lex and is like, what do you think would kill Superman? And so now all of a sudden Lex is like, what do you mean what would kill Superman? Like, what are you trying to do?
I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah. It's like, why do you want to know this? Because he doesn't actually know that Bruce is Batman. But then Bruce reveals it to Lex. So Lex is like, okay, well, I've actually got something, and it's technically, I'm not supposed to tell anyone about it, but my parents aren't here, so whatever. And together they come up with a kryptonite, like a weapon made of kryptonite. So this time Bruce actually takes the fight to Superman in Metropolis. And they fight. Checking my notes, sorry.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
I want to know, does he kill him?
Does he kill him? Who wins?
So yeah, they fight. It looks like Bruce is gonna lose, and then he's like, aha, my trump card. And he's like going off on this tangent about like false gods, and you can't save anyone because you're not final in like whatever. Like he's
This is some Punisher shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, something along the lines of like, here's how it feels to be like scared for your life and whatever and stuff like that. And he kind of ends on the point of like, you could have saved them, but you didn't because there were other more important things going on to you. And he just kind of says that broadly, but we know he's thinking about his parents. But at the same time, all of these other things have been happening, and Batman's been coming in and saving the day where Superman can't. So there's kind of a little bit of resentment there, obviously. So Superman is trying to apologize during the fight. He's like, I thought I was alone in this. You're kind of this masked vigilante who, your methods are awful, but I'm willing to work something out. And he's trying so hard. And then Bruce ends up actually winning. So he kills Superman.
Oh shit.
Wow.
Like he actually kills him. And immediately, like, we get another, I don't know, I don't want to call it a montage because I don't have another good word for it. But basically we see the whole world is mourning. Things are getting really out of control because now all of a sudden Batman has to deal with the things that Superman was dealing with. He thought he could handle them, but he can't.
That's interesting.
And then I really wanted to make it so that this was an unsatisfying ending because right at the end, we see a hand pop out of Superman's grave.
Nice.
Whoa.
Yo, I like that. Batman's the villain of his own story.
Yeah, we kind of, again, we did a little bit of a similar thing.
Like, I actually had, like, Lex be the villain and set Superman up be the villain. Yours is straight up, like, we're following the villain.
Yeah.
And he wins.
Yeah.
And then he realizes, like, all of his own pride at Superman. Like, he's thinking he's better than Superman. But his own pride at blaming Superman for not being able to save his parents. And then all of a sudden, when he's in the situation, he's like, he can't do it. That's so cool. No, that's really well done.
Yeah, I liked how you tied the origin story of Batman to Superman.
Yeah.
That was a creative idea. And then also the idea of basically Superman actually becomes the cause of all these problems because all these people now want to test their strength against him, and then now they're in prison, but now they all come out at the same time. So then it becomes a bigger problem.
Even the idea that aliens are drawn to Earth because Superman is there.
Yeah.
Like they're not even concerned with like Earth itself. It's Superman that they're after, which makes it like, is it really about Earth, or like you could go to somewhere else? So we've created this power vacuum, and now, oh, that's really, really interesting. I also like that the origin is based off of like Superman broadly. So where like from Bruce's point of view, he thinks like with Superman here, nothing bad could happen. And even though we know Superman can't save everyone, in young Bruce's mind, he thinks they can. So when his parents die, his like, not only is his world torn apart, but his like perception of Superman being able to keep everyone safe is also, so even though the origin isn't necessarily like about Superman creating Batman, it is related to it thematically. Like he's not responsible for Batman, but he is part of Batman's disillusionment of the world, which leads him to becoming Batman because Superman couldn't save everyone. Very cool.
That was very well tied together.
Yeah. You won a prize.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, what do I win?
I don't know. I'll figure it out later.
High five.
Okay, I guess it's my turn.
There's nobody else here.
Okay, so in my version, I basically would open with the scene where they find the kryptonite at the bottom of the ocean. I thought that was an interesting idea. Personally, I think it's because an audience going into it they would know, okay, I'm going to see a Batman versus Superman. Why are we here? Why are these guys looking in the ocean? What's going on? I just think that's a much more interesting way to draw an audience in than an origin story, which we've all seen before.
No offense, Alyssa.
No.
No.
That's not what I was implying. I was implying with the Zack Snyder version we see, and I was like, that doesn't tell me anything new. At least, like in your version, that's the story, and you've changed it.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
That's why I tried to avoid doing origins in mine. Like instead, we are like Superman's already been established, but and in mine we don't get Batman's origin story. Instead, we get a Batman who's older.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to imply that yours. Basically, in the Zack Snyder version, we've seen that already, and nothing has changed about it. It's just, it's like, okay, we need an intro sequence. Why not just do it with these guys looking in the ocean? Okay, so in my version, I wanted to develop Lex Luthor as a character a little bit more. So just a bit on Lex Luthor. He runs a company that sells items online and then ships them directly to your house.
Okay. Interesting.
And is like worth billions of dollars and is also bald.
Seems like a very new and revolutionary idea. I like it.
So basically, this guy is holding it. He's in Metropolis, and they're holding a press conference. Him and Wayne are both there, and they both say, "We're going to invest lots of money to rebuild Metropolis." And they're holding a press conference. Lois Lane is at this press conference, and then Lex Luthor at this press conference says, "We should also do something about this guy Superman. Like we should figure out a way to control him. Someone with that much power should not be allowed to act on their own." And then Lois Lane raises her hand and says, well, do you think that LexCorp, the most powerful corporation in the world, should also be given more control? And he basically makes the distinction between we're talking about someone who could defy the law. We're talking about someone who could act with impunity. She also then asks him, she's heard through the grapevine that LexCorp has been given access to this alien spaceship that has crashed. So in my version, Man of Steel is canon.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll say. So now we go to a scene. It's an aside with Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne. And basically, Lex Luthor is questioning Bruce. He's basically saying, you have this vigilante in Gotham City as well. You have this guy, the Batman, who's running around. You would understand where I'm coming from, that we shouldn't allow people to act on their own outside the law. And Bruce Wayne basically says, well, the law and some of those, there's some corruption in Gotham City. And so I think it's okay. If it's going to protect some people who are vulnerable otherwise, I think it's okay for someone to act outside the law if it's going to be to protect some vulnerable people. And Lex says, okay, I see where you're coming from, but the law exists to protect those who otherwise will not be protected. But you misunderstand the purpose of the law, Bruce. The purpose of the law is actually to protect people like you and I. That's actually what it's for.
Yeah.
And
Rich
yes,
people.
I understand like that there are people who are poorer, but you have to understand that this guy, this Superman, he's able to act outside the law. What if he decides that we shouldn't be in our position of power? He can act outside that and effectively undermine us. And basically he says, like, think about what's going on in the world. Like, you're no idiot, Bruce. People hate you because you're rich. People hate me because I'm rich. There's never been a time in history where there hasn't been inequality and it hasn't gone violent. So Lex Luthor, you get the sense that he's a little paranoid about his position and his status in society. So anyways, what follows from this are a series of events. I haven't been able to get too specific, but Superman is essentially forced to intervene to save somebody's life, but as a result, he causes some chaos. So you get the sense that people are starting to go, this question continues, where people go, okay, well, we think he's good because he saves people, but every time he intervenes, it seems to make it worse. And so should someone like this be allowed to run freely, to do their superhero thing in society? While this is going on, what we realize is that Bruce is actually, while he has given money to help fund Metropolis, he's also gotten closer to Lex Luthor because he's trying to investigate LexCorp because he thinks that LexCorp is up to something else. So this is where the detective Batman starts coming in. So he's using his influence as Bruce Wayne and his detective skills as Batman to try and figure out what LexCorp is up to. He's found out that they've gotten access to kryptonite. And he believes, he's like, this kryptonite must somehow be connected to fighting Superman. Then we have a scene actually where Batman actually finds Lois Lane because he knows Lois Lane is trying to investigate LexCorp. So he meets with Lois Lane and he basically says, I know that you know Superman. I want to meet him. She says, okay, well, that's all well and good, but what are you going to do for me in return? And so he says, I can give you internal documents showing that they actually have been conducting research on that spaceship, that they've been given access to it, and that Lex Luthor is actually planning to build his own rocket ship. Any appearance to anyone living is purely coincidental, by the way.
Yeah, no, I got that.
I feel like I just have to say that.
No, I got that.
Okay.
Coincidental.
In case.
Bullshit. Go on.
Okay, so Lois Lane facilitates this meeting, and this meeting is basically Batman's way of trying to figure out if he can trust Superman, because like from the outset he sees Superman seems to be trying to save people, but he doesn't know. He doesn't know who this person is. We then also have a scene where Bruce Wayne, he goes back to talk with Alfred, and Alfred is basically like, why are you so distrusting of this guy? Batman's like, well, I don't know. He seems to be acting on his own. And Alfred says like, well, think about it. Superman's the thing that you could never be as Batman. Superman, you had to be Batman and you had to act as a symbol and act in the shadows. This is a guy who can act in the open. He doesn't have to, okay, we're going to assume he has a secret identity of some kind, but that secret identity, that would be the disguise. Here he is. He's not wearing a mask. We can see who he is. So Alfred basically criticizes Bruce Wayne of saying, you don't like Superman because he's effectively making Batman irrelevant. That's why you're insecure about Superman. Now we have the whole thing on the side with pressure, like outside pressure is now basically putting pressure on governments who believe that the government should interfere to try and stop Superman. But now Lex Luthor comes forward and he says, we can actually do something to stop Superman. I've found this like kryptonite. We can actually, if Superman does anything that goes beyond the scope of law, we can stop him. We have the ability to to prevent him from acting if we have to. Lois even is starting, I felt it was important for Lois Lane even to start questioning Superman and be like,
Yeah.
like how much good are you doing? Like you could be a journalist, like you are a journalist. Why don't you focus on doing that? Every time you show up, it seems to be bad. So Superman himself, like even personally, is being questioned by those who are close to him. And she even says like, look, the real villains are these Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne. Also not realizing that Batman is actually helping her out. Anyway, Superman basically decides, okay, I'm going to disappear for a bit. However, we realize that Lex is actually creating all these events that have been drawing Superman out in the open have actually been orchestrated by Lex Luthor. And so he basically puts his mother in a situation where Superman has to go and rescue her. However, he's unable to rescue her because in the midst of trying to rescue her, people have now said Superman's a criminal, we should stop him. So they show up with kryptonite and they stop Superman. And Superman isn't able to rescue his mother.
Oh.
So she dies. And Superman, he basically, there was a bit that I forgot to add. Bruce Wayne actually takes sides with Lex Luthor. He basically helps fund Lex Luthor building this kryptonite weapon because he feels like he's not sure he can trust Superman, so just as a contingency, he's going to make sure that exists. However, not anticipating that it's going to be used to actually do something nefarious and that someone would die. And so Superman basically, he holds Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne responsible for the death of his mother. But because Superman has, he has like X-ray vision or something. He knows that, but he's figured out that Bruce Wayne.
He's seen under the cowl.
He's seen that Batman is Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne by now has figured out that Superman is Clark Kent. So they both know who each other's identity is. In the aftermath of this, Bruce Wayne discovers that Lex Luthor has been setting up all these things to try and get rid of to justify killing Superman. Yeah. And so he goes and he confronts Lex Luthor. And Lex Luthor admits that he's been trying to research this. He's wants to destroy Superman, not because he feels Superman's a threat to society, but because he feels that Superman is actually a threat to his own ability to basically be in control
from the beginning.
And be in charge from the beginning. Yeah. And so he basically says, like, while there's someone who can act outside the law, that threatens my ability. So I have to stop them. And then he also says, Wayne asks him about the spaceship, what are you doing thing? He says, look, I got to get off this planet. I mentioned that revolution that's coming. It's going to happen. This planet is going to die if we can't, our efforts at this point to trying to do space exploration on our own. I mean, we can only maybe get to Mars. This thing's traveled between galaxies. I could probably find another habitable planet in the galaxy and go. So, and I'm going to fund it with my shipping things to your house business, which is purely coincidental to anything that may exist in the real world, I assure you. Anyway, this time, Batman, he tries to find Superman and be like, look, Lex Luthor is trying to kill you, and basically explain, I was wrong. I didn't know that it was going to be used this way. But Superman is basically angry, and he's determined. He's basically like, Lois Lane was right. You're the villain. You rich people are the villain. And so he basically is determined to kill Batman. So Batman now has to try and defend himself against Superman. And because he's not strong enough to defeat Superman, he uses kryptonite, and that weakens Superman. And this is Lex Luthor shows up. He actually planned for this to happen all along, and so he shows up. Now that Superman's weakened, he can kill Superman, and he does. So Superman dies.
Oh.
But it's actually we get that Batman versus Superman battle that we wanted. That's the climactic battle, and it ends with basically Batman using kryptonite against Superman, and then Lex Luthor jumping in and basically doing the final blow. Now we have where basically Bruce Wayne is basically like, well, now I have evidence of you basically saying that you put that you put Superman in these positions to try and justify killing him. And Lex Luthor goes to court, but he gets away with it.
Yeah.
He gets away with everything in the end. He doesn't go to jail. He gets away with it. And in the final scene, it's Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor is having a drink, and Bruce Wayne comes over and he's like, what you did was wrong. And then Lex Luthor says, basically, well, okay, what are you going to do? The law has vindicated me. All I wanted was to be rid of Superman. And look, you got what you wanted. Look, I know you're Batman. I know you didn't like Superman. I know you want to be Batman. I gave you what you wanted. And he basically calls him out and he's like, so what are you going to do? You're going to like go Batman on me? You're going to like hit me? You can't do anything with me. And basically he leaves Bruce Wayne in a situation where it's like, why are you angry? Like, I gave you what you wanted. And we're both you and I are the same person, and that's how the movie ends.
Ooh. I was wondering at the end there if you were actually going to have Bruce Wayne just kill him, like not even put on the mask, but just come over and just boom, you're dead.
Pull The Departed, just show up at his apartment and clock him.
Yeah.
I really like that yours was like a self-fulfilling prophecy of Lex thinking Superman's gonna hate him and all the other rich people because of the inequalities, and then eventually it gets to that point where Superman's like, it is you guys, and it's because they had been acting that way.
I also like the fact that you at the beginning you straight up said like the law is actually designed to like protect us rich people, and in the end it does.
Yeah.
Right. And then he winds up being like, I'm vindicated. If you kill me, like Batman's a villain.
Exactly. Yeah. And the whole idea of Batman, he basically says like, I have to act outside the law in order to uphold good.
Yeah.
And then in his effort to try and do that, ends up just creates this problem.
Yeah.
But because one of my things with superhero movies as a genre is they're always like pro status quo in the end.
Yeah.
They're always like, okay, we're trying to uphold the status quo. And I thought, okay, well, maybe there's a way to make it so the villain character is trying to maintain the status quo. So then
I think you've done that. Like you basically, and then when you're like, if the villain character upholds the status quo, then is the status quo with her upholding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you try and figure out a way to do it so that they're not trying to defend the status quo. They're actually now trying to figure out a way to get around it, but they can't.
That's so good. Oh man. It's nice to do like have 3 pitches. I know it's a lot to listen to, but it is nice to do 3 pitches because we just get a lot of information, a lot to talk about.
It's always interesting how different people's interpretations are too, and what to do with it.
Even Alessa and I both did like, what if Batman was the villain, sort of, and it was very different.
Yeah.
Right. So, do you guys have any last minute thoughts on Batman versus Superman?
Don't watch it.
I think there is a Batman movie buried in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That I think we all pulled bits of, plus our own ideas. But like, there's a Batman movie buried in there, and it is a Batman movie in my opinion, buried in there. But it's so hidden. It's frustrating because I think this really could have been something cool, and I think you can see that Snyder tried to have something be really cool, but it's a little disappointing. Yeah.
I really want my version to be made, and then it play on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why Amazon Prime? I'm not following.
I just figured it'd be nice to have it on Amazon
like
Prime.
some kind of streaming
Yeah,
service?
just coincidental.
Oh,
that was the first one that came to mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I have to ask both of you, because I'm assuming you've seen it. Should I watch Justice League?
I haven't seen it.
I haven't
I've only seen bits and pieces.
I've not seen
Really?
it.
Maybe next year, Suptember 2022, we'll do another 3-way for Justice League, and I'll force you to watch the full 4-hour version or whatever.
Okay.
I'll need about a year to recover from that.
That works.
So that works out quite well.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
You can find me at twitch.tv/Alessa Lou with 3 O's, or at Alessa Rose Handmade on Instagram.
You can go to my website, www.nathanieldraper.com, or you can follow me on Letterboxd at DraperNate.
You can find my band and Alessa's band, Robot Philosopher, anywhere you listen to dope music. And stick around right here on CineMasters for lots of cool episodes like this podcast, as well as the long and the short of it. And This Is a Thing, as well as whatever else we got going on right here on CineMasters' Ultimate Timeline. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.